This happened in the spring of 2021. I live in British Columbia, and I've always been into backpacking, especially in the coastal forests west of Squamish. If you've never been out there, it's hard to describe. The forest is ancient, and everything is covered in moss. Trees as wide as trucks. Thick mist hanging in the air. No cell reception for miles. I was out on a solo 3-day loop I had planned myself. It cut off from a known trail and followed an old logging road that had been swallowed by the woods. It wasn't listed on any hiking apps anymore, but a few old forums still had coordinates. It was supposed to pass by a forgotten shelter. One of those old corrugated aluminum huts left behind from forestry crews decades ago. I had seen a photo of it once. Rusted roof, no door, just 3 walls and a raised wooden platform to keep you off the ground. I thought it might be cool to check it out and maybe spend the night there. If the weather got bad, the first 2 days were uneventful. The forest was gorgeous. I didn't see a single person, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I camped by a creek the first night and followed the overgrown path the second morning. Around mid-afternoon, the rain started. Not hard at first, just a mist, but by 4 o'clock it had turned into a steady, soaking downpour. That's when I found the shelter. It looked almost exactly like the photo. Warped aluminum roof, 3 walls, open, front. There were ferns growing through the cracks in the wooden floor and moss creeping up one of the beams. But it looked solid, dry, safe. I dropped my pack, set up my sleeping mat, and got into dry clothes. I boiled some tea and listened to the rain hammering the metal roof. It was kind of peaceful. By nightfall, the temperature had dropped and fog had rolled in thick between the trees. I couldn't see more than 10 feet outside the shelter. The forest felt like it was disappearing behind a wall of mist. I zipped into my sleeping bag and left my headlamp nearby. I wasn't nervous. I was used to being alone in the woods. Sometime around midnight, I woke up. It took me a second to register why. There was something scraping against the side of the shelter. At first I thought it was a tree branch in the wind, but the air was dead. Still, the sound was low and deliberate, like nails on metal. Slow, rhythmic drags. I sat up, heart suddenly pounding. I didn't want to turn on my light right away. I just listened. The scraping moved, from the back wall to the side beam, then to the front, like someone was walking around the shelter, dragging something sharp along the metal as they circled. Then it stopped. I waited, every muscle tense, barely breathing, and then I heard it. A breath dot close, not mine, right outside the open front of the shelter. Someone exhaled slowly, like they were just standing there, watching me. I flicked on my headlamp and shined it straight ahead. Nothing, just fog and falling rain. I stepped forward onto the edge of the wooden platform, light aimed into the mist. But there was nothing there. No footprints, no movement, no sound. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just sat with my back against the wall, light on, knife in my hand. When morning came, I stepped outside and looked around the clearing. That's when I saw it, on the side of the shelter. Someone or something had carved into the aluminum. Wall, not words, just lines. Long vertical cuts, some overlapping, some broken. Like tally marks made by dragging a blade or rock over and over. They weren't there the day before. And above them, near the top corner of the shelter wall, was a single bloody handprint. Not fresh, it looked like it had been there a while. Dark, rust-colored, faded into the metal. But it was clearly a hand. I left right after that, didn't eat, didn't drink. I just packed up and hiked through the rain for 7 hours until I reached the main trail and found cell signal. I never posted about it, never told anyone until now, but I looked up that shelter again a few months later. The forum that had the photo was gone, no threads, no cache, no trace of the location, just vanished. Sometimes I wonder if I ever should have found it in the first place. This happened in 2018. I was 22 at the time and had just finished a long college semester. A close friend of mine, Jackson, invited me to join him for a weekend camping trip out in the Appalachians. He knew I needed to unwind, and he also knew a spot that no one else knew about, deep in the woods near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. I trusted Jackson. He was ex-military, solid with maps and survival stuff. He said we'd only be out there 2 nights, and the hike in would be under 6 miles. Sounded perfect to me. We met at a gas station Friday morning, loaded our gear into his truck, and drove several hours into the mountains. Then we parked off a narrow gravel road and started hiking through a thick patch of pine and oak forest. It was early autumn, not too cold yet, but enough that the air had a bite to it. The first couple miles were on a marked trail, but then Jackson pointed to a break in the tree line and said, "This way." That's when we went off trail. There was no path, just layers of leaves, roots, and silence. But Jackson seemed to know exactly where he was going. I asked if he'd been here before. He said not exactly, that it was shown to him years ago by an old guy he used to work with, but that it wasn't on any maps. Cool. About an hour later, we arrived at a clearing, and in the middle of it was a cabin. I was confused. I thought we were tent camping. Jackson shrugged and said, "I figured this would be easier." The cabin was small, maybe 15 by 15 feet. Old, really old. The wood siding was weathered silver grey, and the windows had no glass, just wooden shutters nailed partially shut. The front door leaned slightly off its hinges, and the roof sagged under a thick blanket of rotting pine needles. No trail, no signs, no other campsites nearby. This cabin had clearly been here a long time, completely forgotten. Against my better judgment, I went along with it. Inside, it smelled like mildew and dust. The floor was warped, and there were bits of broken furniture pushed into the corners. A chair frame, an old crate, a table with one leg missing. Still, it was dry, and that was all that mattered. We dropped our packs, set up sleeping bags on the floor, and spent the rest of the afternoon gathering firewood and filtering water from a small creek Jackson had marked nearby. The first night was mostly uneventful. We cooked over the fire, told some stories, had a drink or two, and went to bed early. But sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of tapping, not loud, just deliberate. It was coming from the back wall of the cabin. 3 taps, then a pause, then again. 3 taps. I sat up slowly and looked over at Jackson. He was awake too. I could see him staring toward the wall. "You hear that?" I whispered. He nodded, eyes fixed straight ahead. Neither of us moved. Then the tapping started again, closer this time. It sounded like it had moved from the back wall to the side. Just a few feet away, tap, 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 then silence. I whispered, "What the hell is that?" Jackson didn't answer. He just got up slowly, pulled a flashlight from his pack, and opened the cabin door. He shined the light into the woods. Nothing, but as soon as the beam swept across the tree line, something darted out of view. It was fast, too fast to tell what it was. A blur of movement, just out of reach of the light. We both stood there, frozen. Then Jackson did something I'll never forget. He turned to me and said, "Get your boots on." No hesitation, no questions, just pure instinct. We packed our things in under 5 minutes and left. No breakfast, no fire, just gone. We hiked back in silence. Jackson wouldn't say anything the whole way. When we finally reached the truck and got inside, I turned to him and asked what he saw. He stared out the windshield for a long time before saying, "That cabin wasn't empty when I found it the first time." I asked what he meant. He said he'd camped there years ago with someone else, a coworker. They'd stayed one night and swore they heard voices outside, whispering in circles, walking around the cabin. When they left the next morning, they found dozens of bare footprints in the leaves surrounding the cabin. No shoes, no clothes, just barefoot tracks. Small ones, large ones. Some pressed so deep they looked almost clawed. They never reported it. Never came back until now. I asked him why he brought me there if he already knew something was wrong. He just said, "I thought maybe I imagined it. I thought maybe it was nothing. I was wrong." We never spoke about it again. But I think about that tapping and how it always came in threes. And how whatever it was didn't need a trail to find us. This happened in the summer of 2016. When I was 19, I was going through one of those restless phases where all I wanted was to get away. I had just finished my first year of college, and I felt disconnected from everything. My friends, my parents, even myself. So I decided to go camping, alone. I borrowed my dad's old backpack and tent and drove out to a national forest in Idaho. Not a touristy one, either. This was remote, with huge stretches of trail-less wilderness. I picked a spot I found on a backcountry forum, a place called Bell Pine Basin. People said it was hard to find. Totally isolated, but beautiful. That was all I needed to hear. It took me the better part of a day to get there. A 2-hour drive on pavement, then nearly another hour on dirt roads. And finally, a 4-mile hike along an unmarked ridge trail. I had to rely on downloaded maps because there was zero reception out there. When I got to the basin, it was even more stunning than I expected. A wide, bowl-shaped depression surrounded by thick pine trees and steep hills. A small stream cut through one side, and there was a rocky ledge that overlooked the entire clearing. It looked untouched, untamed. Exactly what I was looking for. I set up camp near the stream, made a small fire, and settled in. The first night was peaceful. I remember sitting outside my tent, eating trail mix, and watching the sun sink behind the ridge. It was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. That kind of silence you only get when you're truly, deeply away from the world. I went to bed around 10 p.m., still feeling safe, still feeling like I was in control. That changed around to a .m. I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why at first. No nightmare, no loud sound, just awake. Alert, and then I heard it. A voice. It came from directly behind my tent, just a few feet away. It wasn't yelling, it wasn't whispering. It was murmuring, like someone was talking softly, maybe to themselves. I couldn't understand the words. The voice was too low, too slurred, but it was unmistakably human. I sat up, hard hammering, and held my breath. The voice kept going, rambling, calm, like a monologue with no audience. I slowly reached for my flashlight, flicked it on, and aimed it at the back wall of my tent. Fabric glowed, and for a split second, I thought I saw a silhouette just standing there. not moving, just there. Then the voice stopped. Silence. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to unzip the tent. I didn't want to make a sound. After maybe 30 seconds, though it felt like hours, I heard footsteps. Light ones, crunching the pine needles, slowly, heading off toward the stream. I waited and waited. Eventually, I crawled out and scanned the woods with my light dot. Nothing, no movement, no prints, not even broken twigs. But I knew what I heard. I knew I hadn't dreamed it. I stayed up the rest of the night, knife in my hand, flashlight on my lap, staring at the tent door. The next day, I seriously considered hiking out, but something stupid in me, maybe pride, said I was overreacting, that I was letting my imagination get the better of me, so I stayed. Big mistake that second night. I didn't sleep. I lay in my tent with the light off, ears straining for any sound. At around 3 a.m., I heard it again, the voice. But this time, it wasn't behind my tent. It was inside the basin, echoing softly off the walls of the trees, weaving in and out of the wind like it was floating. This time it was clearer. Not actual words, but patterns, intonations. It sounded like humming. Then came the footsteps. Slow, crunch, pause, crunch, pause, getting closer. I sat up again, but didn't move. I didn't dare shine my light this time. Then I heard the zipper on my tent twitch, just once. Not opening, not pulling, just a small, light tug, like a finger brushing against the metal teeth. Then silence, then breathing, right outside the flap. Shallow, uneven, like whoever it was had been running. Then a soft whisper, right next to the tent. I see you. That was it. I exploded out of the tent barefoot, flashlight in one hand, knife in the other. I shined the beam in every direction, expecting to see someone running, or at least hear it. But there was nothing. The forest was dead silent again. I packed everything as fast as I could. No breakfast, no checking gear. I just shoved it all in my pack, slung it over my shoulder, and started hiking. I didn't stop. For anything, I didn't drink. I didn't look back. And the whole time, I kept thinking, what if it hadn't stopped at the zipper? What if I hadn't woken up? I don't camp alone anymore. Not because I'm scared of the woods, not really. It's because I know that somewhere, someone is out there, and they don't need to knock. They already know where you are. This happened in early spring of 2023, and it still messes with me when I think about it. I'm a wildlife photographer, not professionally, more of a passionate hobbyist. I live in western Pennsylvania, and I often head out to some of the less forest preserves to get away from the crowds and capture shots of deer, foxes, owls, whatever I can find. That weekend, I wanted to try a new location. I'd heard from a friend about a strip of forest just outside Allegheny National Forest. Not technically part of the park, but still heavily wooded and quiet. I found a logging access road on an old satellite map that cut into it, and from there, I planned to bushwhack to a small ravine about 3 miles in. There was a stream that snaked through it, and supposedly a lot of wildlife activity. The hike was uneventful, quiet, peaceful. I set up a small base camp near the stream. Just my tent, camera gear, some food, and a trail cam I brought with me. Usually set it up overnight to capture animal movement while I sleep. It's motion activated and shoots in night vision, mounted to a tree about chest height. The first night was calm. I cooked some dinner on my little stove, listened to the stream, and turned in early. No sounds, no weird feelings, Just the kind of solitude I love. The next morning, I woke up just before sunrise and hiked over to retrieve my trail cam so I could check the footage. When I got there, I froze. There were 2 trail cams on the tree. Another one I hadn't put there. It was identical in brand, but older. Faded plastic, covered in dust, with a fraying strap that looked like it had been there for months, maybe longer. I hadn't noticed it the day before, and I'm extremely careful about scanning trees when setting mine up. I don't want to overlap other people's stuff. The weirdest part, it was mounted just above mine, like whoever put it there had seen where I placed mine and wanted to record the same exact spot, plus me. I stared at it for a while, unsure what to do. I didn't want to touch someone else's property, but something about it made my skin crawl. Still, I took my own camera off the tree, brought it back to camp, and reviewed the footage on my laptop. There were a few deer, a raccoon, and then, around 2:37 a.m., a man. He walked straight into the frame from the trees, tall, wearing a hoodie. No flashlight. He didn't look at the camera. He didn't look around. He walked directly to the tree and looked at mine. Then he looked up, right at the second trail cam. He stood there for a while. Then he walked away. Didn't run, didn't hide. Just casually turned and disappeared back into the trees like he knew the forest. I felt a cold knot settle in my chest. I kept thinking, did he know I was here? Did he follow me? I decided to check the other trail cam. I climbed up, carefully unstrapped it, and brought it back to camp. It was crusted in dirt and pine sap, but still functional. It had an SD card inside. I plugged it into my laptop. It had hundreds of clips, dozens of animals, and dozens of people. People camping, people walking, a couple setting up a hammock, solo, hikers. None of them were me, which means it had been watching this area for a long time. The timestamps went back over a year. Some were daytime, some night. All of them caught at the exact angle I had placed mine. Like whoever owned the older one didn't want to film animals. They wanted to film whoever came here. And then, near the end of the footage, was a clip from the night before I arrived. The camera activates around 2 a.m. and there, in the frame, is a man. The same man I saw later in my own footage. Only this time, he's walking right up to the spot. He leans in and stares directly into the lens, and smiles, like he knew exactly who'd be watching it. That was enough for me. I didn't bother breaking camp. I stuffed everything into my backpack, didn't even bother rolling the tent, and just left. I hiked straight back to my car. On the drive home, I couldn't stop glancing at the rearview mirror. I never posted the pictures. I never shared the footage. I threw away the SD card. I couldn't bring myself to watch the rest of it, but I still think about it. That man in the woods, how he wasn't surprised by the cameras, how he walked between them like he owned the forest, and how his trail cam was, already waiting for me. This happened in 2014. I was 25, and I had just moved to Montana for work. I'd grown up in a city and had never really been out in the wilderness alone before. But something about the vastness of the forests out here fascinated me. That year, I made it my mission to get comfortable with solo backpacking by the end of summer. I had already done a few one-night trips on popular trails. I wanted to push it further, so I picked a spot I found in an old hiking book. A plateau called Broken Tooth Ridge. It was deep in the forest, about 5 miles from the nearest trailhead, and it was listed as a seldom used detour off a closed forestry route. There were no facilities, no fire rings, no campsites, but the book said the view was incredible, and that was enough for me. I left early in the morning and parked where the old forest road ended, a spot that looked like no one had touched it in years. The hike was long and the incline was rough, but the weather was perfect. Clear skies, late summer breeze, and complete silence in the forest. Not peaceful silence, hollow silence. That was the first thing I noticed. No birds, no rustling squirrels, no insects even. It was like something had sucked the sound out of the forest. I remember stopping at one point, clapping my hands just to test the echo, and hearing nothing, no return sound, just dead air. That should have been enough to turn back, but it wasn't. I kept hiking. When I finally reached the top of the ridge, the view was unreal. A full 360-degree sweep of forest and distant mountains. No roads, no towers, no signs of civilization at all. I set up my tent on a patch of soft pine needles and ate a quick lunch. I didn't even bother with a fire, just wanted to enjoy the quiet. That night, I lay in my sleeping bag staring at the nylon ceiling of my tent, thinking about how good it felt to be truly alone. Then I heard something, a soft snap, like a small branch being stepped on. It came from the far side of the ridge, maybe 100 feet away, near the drop dash off. At first, I thought it might have been a deer, but it didn't move, didn't rustle, just one single crack, and then nothing. I sat up, listening hard, and then I heard breathing, slow, deep, like someone trying not to be heard, but standing close enough for me to notice. I turned off my HEADL AMP. Total darkness, no moon, no stars. Just void. Then I heard something else, a whistle, one short, steady tone, like someone trying to get a dog's attention. It came from the other side of the ridge, now opposite where the branch had snapped. That's when I knew. There were at least 2 of them, and they weren't animals. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. I just sat in my tent, holding my breath, heart slamming against my ribs. Then I heard whispering. I couldn't make out words, just the soft, crackling sound of a voice not meant to be understood. Like breath moving through dry leaves, it moved around my tent. Not fast, not stealthy, just calmly pacing in a wide circle, as if whoever it was already knew where I was and wasn't in a rush that then. After a long silence, I heard something slide, like metal on fabric, and my tent shifted, not from wind, not from settling, from pressure, like someone dragging their hand along the side of the nylon. I almost screamed, but then it stopped. No more sounds, no more voices. I didn't sleep. I just waited until the first blue light of dawn started to peek through the trees. When I finally stepped outside, there was no sign of anyone, but near the edge of the ridge, where the brush was soft, I found footprints, barefoot, but wide, too wide to be human, at least not normal, wider than mine. The toes were spread unnaturally far apart, and the arch was nearly flat. I don't know how else to describe them other than wrong. I packed everything in, silence, and left. And here's the thing that sticks with me. On the hike down, I tried calling out, just once, to hear myself. To hear something, I yelled, "Hello," into the trees. No echo, not even the sound of my own voice bouncing back, just a dead, muffled wall of silence, like the forest had swallowed it whole. Whatever lives in those woods doesn't need to chase you, it just waits. and it listens when you think you're alone. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. But the woods are full of stories we haven't told yet, so if you want more true horror like this, make sure to subscribe, turn on the bell, and join us. Next time, in the dark, like what you heard, there's more where that came from. Subscribe to true horror stories based on real events. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss what's hiding in the dark.